Hey guys, what's up? This is Darklaw of Darklaw's Domain here, and time for another collection video. This time it's gonna be on my original PlayStation collection. It's not my biggest collection. I don't have as many PS1 games as I do with my PS2 games, but I still have quite a bunch. Fair warning, some of my opinions on these games may be a bit half-assed, so if they are, I wholeheartedly apologize for that. It's just I haven't played all of these games in depth, so some of my memories with these games may be a little hazy, and also some of them I haven't even played in a while, because I haven't played a whole lot of PlayStation games in a while, except for Breath of Fire 3, which I am currently playing through, but for the most part, I haven't been playing as many PS1 games as I used to. Most of my attention's been diverting toward my PS3 and PS4 games, and my Xbox One games, so yeah. But I still do play the PS1 every now and then. Just need to play more of it. Anyways, let's not waste any more time and get to it. So, the first game I want to show is, well, this isn't really Metal Gear Solid, but I'm showing this to get out of the way because there are a couple of games in here that I did put in there because I didn't have anywhere else to put them. And they are Silent Hill and Need for Speed High Stakes. Silent Hill I haven't played too much of, but from what I've played, it's pretty good. It's a bit confusing, and it's a pretty frustrating game, I will admit, but then again, it is survival horror, so of course it's going to get a little bit frustrating. Need for Speed High Stakes, which I actually haven't played, sorry to say. Next I have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which, yes, they did make a Pro Skater 3 on the original PlayStation, and it's actually pretty good. I wasn't really expecting it to be any good because, well, it is a last-gen port of an next-gen game, and usually those don't turn out that great, but this was one of those games that did it right. It plays a lot like Pro Skater 2, and it also does a few things differently that from the next-gen versions, like the level layouts are a bit differently designed, and there are some goals that haven't changed to work around the PS1's limited hardware, and I thought that was kind of neat, so yeah. Overall, this is a pretty solid port. Not as good as the PS2 version, but still good. Still very good for sure. Jet Moto 3. I sadly don't have the first two games. Jet Moto 3, though, I did really enjoy, and I had a lot of fun with it, but I can't say much about Jet Moto 1 and 2. I played Jet Moto 1 once, and I remember liking it, but that was years ago. I was like 13 when I played that game last. And I haven't even played Jet Moto 2, so I don't really have anything to say about much to say about these games. Jet Moto 3 I have played a good few times, though, and I actually did really enjoy it. Hot Wheels Turbo Racing. This game is really good. It's basically a stunt racing game where you do stunts and tricks, well, obviously. And it's got a lot of different Hot Wheels cars to choose from, like the Sweet 16-2, the Split and Image 2, the Power Pistons, Diora, and a bunch of other stuff. There's over 40 different cars, which is pretty sweet. It also has a pretty good soundtrack. It has my favorite band of all time in there, Metallica, with their song Fuel, which I think is a pretty kick-ass song, despite what other people say. And it also has Primus, which is another band I really like. So, yeah. Pretty fun game, and it actually does play well for a stunt racing game. I had a lot of enjoyment of it. It's also on the N64 as well, and that version's pretty solid, too. Now, this is actually Metal Gear Solid. In fact, it's incomplete. Here's the first disc. The freaking case is pretty loose, so I don't know why. There's the manual. And here is the second disc. Honestly, I love this game. This is without question one of my favorite PlayStation 1 games. I know that's like a game that everyone talks about and is like, it's on a lot of people's lists, and for good reason. This game is really good. Like, it is an amazing PS1 game. The graphics definitely look a bit dated now, but at the time, they were incredibly impressive. I'm so sorry I'm using a lot of filler words here. Just bear with me. I am not the most literate. But they were very impressive for the time because a lot of PS1 games back then would use a lot of pre-rendered backgrounds with the 3D models. But with Metal Gear Solid 1, everything was a 3D model, and considering how big the game was at the time, it was quite cool, and with the long cutscenes, it's just really impressive. But enough about the graphics. The actual game itself is just flat out amazing. The stealth mechanics still function and just as well as they did back then, if not maybe a bit clunky in places, but it still works very well. The voice acting still holds up very well, especially considering how old this game is. A lot of PS1 games prior to this did not have the best of voice acting. They tended up to be very cheesy, and at the very least, just mildly okay. But this one was one of the PS1 games at the time that actually had really good voice acting, and I mean like really good, like A-list quality. You got freaking Paul Eiding, who voices the Colonel. You got David Hayter, or as he's codenamed in the game, Sean Barker, who voices Solid Snake. James Flinders, who voices Liquid Snake, or McDonald Miller, as he's covered in the game. Sorry about the spoiler thing. I should have said spoiler alert. But if you haven't played the game already. But anyways, and then there is also Debbie Mae West, who voices Mei Ling, who helps with game saves and stuff like that. I forget who I meant to say voices. I forget who voices Naomi, Dr. Naomi, but her voice was really good too. I mean, honestly, pretty much. And you even got Greg Eagles, who voices the DARPA chief. And fun fact about Greg Eagles himself, he actually did the voice for Grim from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and he also was the boss who informs you on your missions for Reckless Yakuza missions on PlayStation 2, which was a fairly decent game, but not amazing. Anyways, yeah, Metal Gear Solid 1 is just amazing. From the top-notch voice acting to the excellent gameplay and stealth mechanics. It's not an easy game, that's for sure. It will kick your ass sometimes, but it's a lot of fun, and it also has some of the most creative boss fights I've seen. Well, actually, some are very creative, others are a bit of a mixed bag. The Vulcan Raven boss fights I absolutely despise, because the first one is way too damn frustrating, the second one is just too easy. The tank one, I found incredibly frustrating because of all these damn explosives everywhere, and because you have to throw the grenade in the right spot to blow his tank up. And the other one where you fight him on foot, I found that to be too easy. When I was younger, I had a hard time trying to fight him because I found him to be way too OP. But now that I'm older and know what to do, he is just far too damn easy. So yeah, there you go. But there were other boss fights I did find creative, like the Psycho Mantis boss fight. As disturbing as it is to me, it's still a very creative fight, with how he just does a lot of crazy shit to mess your game up, like make you think that your game shut off on you, or just rob you of all control from the first controller port to the second. And another one being the Metal Gear Rex boss fight. It was wait, was it Rex? Yeah, it was Rex. It's frustrating as sin, don't get me wrong, but it was still a very good boss fight all around. I think my least favorite fight was the Hind. Well, and the Vulcan Raven tank fight, but the Hind was just dreadful. I did not like that fight. It was a serious pain in the ass, and it was incredibly hard to it was incredibly frustrating to get to it was incredibly frustrating and incredibly tedious to get your missile to lock on properly. It was just brutal. But for the most part, the game was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, even though there were a few parts I wasn't a big fan of. Okay, I'm rambling on way too much. I've only showed 5 games, and we're all like 10 minutes in already, so let's just stop farting around and continue. Stuart Little 2. For a game based off a movie, it's actually pretty decent. I liked it a lot more than most would expect. The movie was actually really good, and I enjoyed it, and the first one was really good too. But the second game, it's not bad. It's a 3D platformer similar to Mario 64, but it controls a bit differently, and you do have more control over the camera, but it is a pretty decent game. Although the biggest issue I have with it is that it's a little too easy. It's very safe and baby-friendly, and it's just kind of... It's a little bit to the point where it's a bit insulting. But unlike Toy Story 2, which was more challenging, but it wasn't a complete... Where it was still a bit easy, but it had enough of a challenge. This one's not really all that challenging. You can go through this game like maybe 4 hours at the most. I'm not entirely sure. It's been a while since I played this game, but regardless of the issues provided, I enjoyed it. It was a fairly solid game. I had a fun time with it. Tekken 3. This is what I would consider the best game on the PlayStation. My favorite PS1 game of all time, and my favorite fighting game of all time, too. I swear, I love Tekken 3. It is my favorite game on the system for many reasons. One, the fighting mechanics have not only been improved upon, but they've been tweaked to perfection to where it feels incredibly natural and smooth. Also, when you first play it, it is hard to grasp at first, but the more you play it, the better you get. And it's challenging, but it isn't bullshit. It's very... And, it just never gets overkill with its difficulty, except for Heihachi at times, because there are times when Heihachi is really easy in spots and then really difficult in spots, but if you learn the ins and outs of the game, you'll really start to get it. I had a lot of fun playing this game because I know this game like the back of my hand. There's just so much I remember, so much I can do. It's just, I love this game, man. It's just amazing. Not only that, but there's a lot of different characters, and they all control very differently, which is nice. Well, except for a few characters, like, actually, are a few characters that do play a little bit of the same. I just can't remember any off the top of my head, but rest assured, there are a couple of samey characters, but for the most part, they play very much differently. And I really do like watching the endings. They're funny. Most of them are very funny, and some of them are just absolutely badass, like Brian Fury's ending, for instance. It's just an overall really good game, and it's also incredibly impressive for its time because the game runs at a brisk 60 frames per second with literally no slowdown whatsoever. The graphics have been heavily cranked up, and it looks even better than before with nice detailed polygon models. The cutscenes look amazing, way better than Tekken 1 or 2's cutscenes, to the point where they actually don't look like nightmares anymore. Just an overall fantastic game. I love it. I could go on and on for hours of how amazing this game is, but I'm just gonna stop there because I'm wasting a lot of time. Army Man World War Team Assault. Yeah, I apologize for the broken case. I've had this game for a long time, since I was like 11. Anyways, this is okay, but really not my favorite game in the series. I actually do really like the Army Man games. They're a lot of fun to play, but this is not one of my favorites. The game is incredibly frustrating. Like, it's way more difficult than the previous entries I've played. While the Army Man games are not easy, they're not bullshit hard. Like, the challenge is fair, and if you die in the game, it's on you. It's not because of crappy programming. But this one, it feels unfinished and rushed in places, and there are times when it just gets way too damn cheap. And I'm not a fan of cheap difficulty. Even in the normal mode or even the easy mode, it's just a pain in the ass to get through, and I never finished it because of that. Also, another issue this game suffers from is that it's very monotonous, and it gets boring really fast. There's also a lack of voice acting, which is very surprising. I know they're toys, but they had voice acting in Sarge's Heroes 2, and I think the first one as well. So there was kind of no excuse to not have any voice acting here. So it's kind of lame that they kind of half-ass this project, but what can you do? Maybe I'll... Oh, and another issue this game suffers from, the multiplayer is god-awful. It is really dark, and it's hard to see where you're going sometimes, and it also does slow the game down quite a bit. So, yeah, it isn't fun. The game isn't awful. It could be a lot worse. It's not the worst Rayman game I've ever played, but it isn't very good. Lunar, Silver Star Story complete. Oh my god, am I gonna have to waste another couple of minutes talking about this game? Because I love this game. I have such fond memories of it, and I have so many things to talk about this game. This is actually my second copy. The first copy I had, well, it wasn't really my copy. It was my mom's boyfriend at the time's copy. I just played it a lot. But this is my own copy, which I paid 35 bucks for, and I don't regret it at all, because I love this game to death, and it's aged really well in my opinion, with maybe one exception being the difficulty, because the difficulty is kind of rough. It's a pretty frustrating game sometimes. Actually, it's one of the hardest RPGs I've ever played, but with a little patience and persistence, you can make it through it. It's not impossible. What really drove me to complete it was the freaking story and the voice acting. Not to mention the beautiful music and the really nice, lush environments. So despite the difficulty being frustrating, the rest of the game is just pure gold. I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to make sure I got everything that I needed. Like, obviously I needed the first 2 discs, which were the game, but I also wanted the soundtrack, because I love the soundtrack, and I did get it, and the making of, because I needed the complete package at least. I didn't have to have the collector's edition thing. I just wanted all the discs and the case, nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. There's just so much I could talk about this game, but I think I'll save that for maybe like a review. So, yeah. Gran Turismo. The first one. It's an alright game, but it really hasn't aged well compared to the later games in this series. They did improve upon so much more in the later games. Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2000. This game just sucks. I'm not really a fan of sports games, and Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2000 does nothing for me. It's a very lackluster game with very shitty physics. It's just bad. I don't like it at all. I'm sorry to anyone who does like it. I just don't. Maybe it's just because I don't like sports games very much, but it's just, I just don't like the game at all. It isn't fun. Twisted Metal 4. Now this game's actually fun. I know people are saying that like single-track games are better, but I haven't played enough of Twisted Metal 2 to really give an honest opinion about it. And I never played the first one. But Twisted Metal 3, I didn't think it was as bad as people said it was. I mean, it's not that great, but it isn't that bad. I thought it was alright for what it was. But 4, I had a lot of fun playing. I really enjoyed it. I know it's not as good. I know, in general, it's not as good as the first 2. But I still think this is a very solid game. And I love the soundtrack with Rob Zombie, who I am a huge fan of. I love Rob Zombie's music. It's just freaking awesome. But yeah, Twisted Metal 4, very fun game, and what is really cool is that you can customize your own car. Your own vehicle, anyways. I don't know if you could do that in Twisted Metal 3. I forgot if you could do that, but I do remember. But I know in 4 you can do that, so yeah. Spec Ops Stealth Patrol. This game is just trash. I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend it. It's not a very good third-person shooter. It's just very boring, very monotonous, not very fun at all. Incredibly frustrating to play because the controls are just overcomplicated to me. I don't know about you guys, but oh well. Tomb Raider 1. For the time it was good, but it's incredibly dated now, and it's really clunky in comparison to the later games, which were a lot better. Syphon Filter, the first one. Man, these games are hard. They will kick you in the balls. But despite that, though, the game is fun. I actually do enjoy the Syphon Filter games. They're really good. They're just hella difficult. But considering that they were more focused on stealth and straight-up action, I can honestly understand it. The difficulty does make perfect sense. Breath of Fire 3. As I said in the beginning of the video, I am currently playing through this, and I'm honestly loving this game. I don't know how far I've gotten. I can't really say I'm halfway through it, but so far, I really am enjoying it. It's a really good RPG that isn't easy, but it isn't too difficult. The difficulty does crank up as the game progresses, which I think is perfect, because I don't like a game that has, like, I don't like it when a game has, like, it's just a bunch of random difficulty spikes for absolutely no reason whatsoever. How I think difficulty should go in video games is that it either should come naturally, like, it starts off simple at first, but it gets harder as it progresses, or at least keep it consistent. Like, I like things to be consistent. Like, if you're gonna make a hard game, keep it consistently hard throughout. And if you want to make an easy game, keep it consistently easy throughout. But don't make it so easy that it's just insulting and laughable. But anyways, Breath of Fire 3 is a game that starts off pretty easy, but then it does get harder over time. And I think that's perfect. Good job, Capcom. Battletanx Global Assault. This game was pretty fun. I had some enjoyment playing this game on the multiplayer mode. The single-player campaign is just bizarre as hell, though. Although it's been a long time since I've played this game, so yeah, I'm not going to be remembering everything about it, but I do remember this game being enjoyable for what it was. It's a fun tank game, just where you get to destroy things, and just, yeah, this is fun. I don't really know what to say about it now. Maybe I'll replay it tomorrow, maybe tonight. I don't really know. It's pretty late it's pretty late in the evening, so I'll probably just play it tomorrow. But it's a great game. But it's a good game. I enjoyed it. It was also one of the last games 3DO made on the original PlayStation before moving on to different hardware, I think. No, I know Army Man World War Team Assault came out a year after Battletanx in 2001, so maybe that was their last one. I know Battletanx was one of the last. It wasn't the last, but it was one of the last. MLB 2002. Like I said, with Tiger Woods PGA Tour, it's not that great. Although this one is more responsive and it does play better. It's not a bad game, unlike Tiger Woods, which was kind of shit. But MLB 2002... as a game itself, it isn't bad, but I don't really like sports games, so I don't give a shit. WWF SmackDown 2, Know Your Role. Now, while I do not like sports games for the most part, I do like wrestling games. Wrestling and boxing games and extreme sports games like the Tony Hawk series, I actually enjoy because they're not so, because they aren't so strict with the rules, and they're actually a lot more fun to play for me because they're just much more arcade-like, and because the SmackDown games, the WWF games in general, remind me more of fighting games, and I love fighting games, so that's why I played these games. And SmackDown 2, Know Your Role, is a pretty damn good game. One of the best wrestling games on the PlayStation, if you ask me. I also recommend Warzone. That's a really good game, too. Breath of Fire 4. I wouldn't say it's as good as 3, but it's still a pretty solid game nonetheless. I just haven't sank enough time into it. I'm intent on finishing Breath of Fire 3 before I play through 4. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the first one. While not as good as it once used to be, it's still a very solid game, and it still holds up decently well. While it is a bit clunky in places, it's still a classic, and I do enjoy playing it every now and then. Rallycross 2. You know, this is one of those games that had so much potential, but unfortunately, it's a very underwhelming experience. The steering is incredibly sensitive, and it makes driving really difficult to navigate. And not to mention the course creator mode is pretty weak. I get that it's an original PlayStation game, and it was ambitious for the time, but I think it could have been better utilized. This is not a great game. It's better than the first Rallycross, but it's still not that great of a game. It's not awful, but it could have been so much better. Jimmy White's 2 Cueball. It's just an okay pool game. I prefer playing real pool, because I actually enjoy playing pool in real life. It's a lot of fun, but pool in video game form, this game really doesn't represent the game that accurately well. Maybe it does, I don't really know, but I just didn't enjoy it too much. The only really cool thing about it was the drop zone arcade cabinet. Yeah, I had a lot more fun playing that than I did with the actual pool aspect. Cabela's Big Game Hunter Ultimate Challenge. This game just sucks. Easily the worst Cabela hunting game I've played. It looks nice, but the problem with that is good graphics don't make a good game, and this game really shows that. Like, the biggest issue I have is the controls. They're very weird. They're in the wrong place, and I don't remember if you can customize them or not. But they're just assigned very strangely, and it's very hard to get used to. It's incredibly slow. Even if you try to run, it's a serious pain in the ass to do it. So moving around is just... it's so slow, and it's so tedious. It just isn't fun to play. If you're going to look for a better Cabela's game, I just say go for Big Game Hunter on the PS2. It's a lot better. Tomb Raider 3. Now, I did say that the first game hasn't aged well, but this one actually has. This one is still a very fun game, and it has held up quite well. Oh shit, the case is broken. I actually forgot about that. But I bought it for really cheap, $6, and I enjoy it. It's a great game. A lot better than Tomb Raider 1. I don't remember if it... while I can't say... I wouldn't say it's better than Tomb Raider 2, but it's still I would say it's just as good. I still think both games were really fun to play. Last Revelation was alright, but it wasn't anything special. But Tomb Raider 3, easily the best PS1 Tomb Raider game, if you ask me. I felt the controls were a lot more responsive, it looked nicer, it played better. It was a lot more interesting to me. Medal of Honor, first game. For a first entry in the series, this one has held up surprisingly well. I still enjoy this game. It's a lot of fun to play, even on multiplayer. Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles. This isn't a bad game, but it's really clunky. It's supposed to be like a Star Wars hack-and-slash beat-em-up sort of thing, but it's very stiff, and while not unresponsive, feels a bit, it just feels a bit, clunky and delayed in places. Not a great game, but not bad either. Crash Team Racing. Now this is a great game. This one is a lot of fun, and it was also the last game by Naughty Dog, the last Crash game by Naughty Dog before they moved on to bigger projects like the Jak and Daxter trilogy. This game is just a lot of fun, and in my opinion, way better than Diddy Kong Racing. While the hub worlds are not as big as they are in Diddy Kong Racing, they don't have as much filler to them. They have more personality, and the races are just a lot more fun and intense. Like, you got this, like, feeling of adrenaline pumping through your veins, and it's just a lot more fun and entertaining for me. I really enjoyed this game. Chrono Cross. Honestly, I have to replay this because I remember, because when I played this before, I did think it was decent, but but the biggest issue for me was the battle system. I had a lot of trouble with it because I found it to be needlessly complex, but maybe this game is better than I remember it. I don't know. I'll have to replay this game. Die Hard Trilogy. A game based off one of my favorite movies, franchises of all time, Die Hard, which I absolutely love. I've seen them all. They're really good movies, and yes, even I do think that A Good Day to Die Hard was pretty decent. No, it wasn't as good as the rest. It was easily the worst one in the series, but I still found it to be a pretty solid movie despite it. The Die Hard Trilogy is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. The cool thing about this is that it's actually like 3 different games in one, with different playstyles. The first one's an action, third-person shooter kind of game. The second one's more like a light gun game. And the third one's more of a driving game. While the first 2 I really enjoyed, they're a lot of fun to play. But Die Hard with a Vengeance, the third game with the driving sections, it is really, really difficult to play. Mainly just because the controls are very slippery and kind of stiff and rickety, and it just feels oversensitive at times, making gameplay needlessly difficult. Like, artificially difficult. I mean, it's already hard as is, but trying to play through it with messy controls does damper the experience. Despite that, though, the rest of the package is still a lot of fun. I had enjoyment out of it. Even though it's based off a movie, it's one of those few games that actually does right how to make a good movie-based game. Spec Ops Ranger Elite, same deal with Stealth Patrol. It really isn't that much different. It's the same game, it's still pretty bad, nothing special. Mortal Kombat 4. The only Mortal Kombat game I have on the system, sadly. I do intend on getting Trilogy eventually, but not at the moment. But Mortal Kombat 4 is awesome. I really enjoyed this game. I know a lot of people didn't really like it compared to Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 because, yeah, I admit the transition from 2D to 3D was a bit on the rough side, but I still found it to be a lot of fun. It has a lot of charm to it, and there was definitely plenty of effort put into it. It's also the first game in the series to utilize weapons, which is pretty cool, but in concept, but unfortunately, the weapon system sucks. Not because the weapons are bad. The weapons are really cool, but the problem with the weapon system is how you use them. Because in order to even use your weapons, you have to insert a very ridiculous button command just to summon your weapons, and that can get very annoying, and it's unnecessarily tedious. They did fix that in Deadly Alliance, though, which you could just be able to switch between fighting styles and weapons on the fly, and that made things a hell of a lot easier and a whole lot better. While this one's just needlessly complicated for summoning weapons. They could have easily just used the shoulder buttons for that, but I'm just glad they fixed it in the later games. Needless to say, though, despite that, Mortal Kombat 4 is still a very solid game, and I had a lot of fun playing it, and the endings are just hilarious. Some of them are just kind of cringy, but for the most part, they're hilarious. This is just cheesy goodness. Dragon Ball GT The Final Bout. Definitely one of the worst games I've played on the system. It's not aged well at all. I used to really like this game when I was a kid, but I was blinded by nostalgia, and looking back on this now, it's really not that good of a game. The graphics are nice, but the gameplay is really sluggish, and the controls feel a bit stiff and unresponsive at times, to the point where doing special moves is almost a chore. Like, it feels nearly fucking impossible to utilize a Kamehameha wave, something as simple as that, or even just a finish buster. It is a serious pain in the ass, and I cannot stand it. I'm just glad they fixed it in the later games. It made it a lot less tedious and much more palatable and easier to swallow. This one's just unnecessarily frustrating, and it's not because you need skill, but just because this game is just very poorly made. bad programming at its not at its absolute worst, but definitely some really crappy programming. Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. This is actually a pretty decent game. I had some enjoyment playing this one. It does have the traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game style, which I do like. Sadly, though, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game's kind of gone downhill for me because I find the cards to be, like, very overcomplicated now. It used to be so simple and fun to play, but now because you gotta go through all this unnecessarily complicated shit just to use a stupid card, it just becomes annoying and incredibly tedious. So yeah. Namco Museum Volume 3. This was alright. It had some fairly solid games. It has Galaxian, Ms. Pac-Man, Pole Position 2, Dig Dug, Fozon, and Tower of Jiraga. Most of the games are pretty solid. They're typical classic Namco arcade games. Nothing too spectacular, but still classics. But my least favorite here is the Tower of Jiraga for sure. I didn't like this game too much. I found this game to be incredibly broken and unplayable. I'm sorry, I just couldn't get into it. Tekken 2. While not as good as the first game, it's still a very solid game, and I do come back to this one every now and then. But because I was so spoiled with Tekken 3, I just prefer playing that one more, but 2 is still very fun. I would definitely play it over the first Tekken any day. PlayStation Underground Volume 1. This one doesn't really have many demos, it just has only a demo of Shadow Tower and Project Wormhole, which more like 1.5 demos. Because Project Wormhole isn't really a game per se, it's just more of a tech demo. Final Fantasy VIII. Yeah, I know the case is broken too. From what I played of it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't finish this game. I really need to get around to it sometime. Syphon Filter 2. A little bit better than the first one. I actually really enjoyed it, but like its first, but it's still a bit clunky at times, but definitely has been tweaked a bit better. My biggest complaint with this game is just a bit, it's just a bit on the slow side, and also the voice acting is just not very good. But the game is overall pretty solid, and I enjoyed it for what it is. I think this might be a pretty long game because it was split around 2 discs. I don't know, is it long? Let me know in the comments. I would like to hear. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Not my favorite game in the series, but still a very solid entry. Definitely a lot better than the first one, and it's still fun to play today. Ridge Racer. The first one. You know, the game was very groundbreaking and revolutionary for its time, and it's still a decent game to play now, but unfortunately, it has shown its age. There's really not much to do in this game. While I totally get while I totally understand why this game was hailed as such an amazing game, nowadays it just isn't really all that fun to play anymore because if you really look at it, think about it, it's very repetitive because the game has only like 11 cars to choose from, which for a game released in 1995, or 1995, well, really, it was released in the arcades in 1993, but in 1995 it was released on PlayStation in the United States. It just feels, it's just, but playing it now, there's really no reason to go back to it anymore because the game is just, there really isn't much to it. There just isn't much to it. It's a very, very short game that can easily be beaten in like under an hour. It's not really all that impressive anymore. But credit where credit is due, it was an impressive game for its time. Gran Turismo 2. Yeah, I don't have the case for the second game. But Gran Turismo 2, it's definitely a lot better than the first one, and I do occasionally come back to it every now and then. But I do prefer playing the PS2 ones a lot more because they do play better for me. PlayStation Underground Volume 2. This one contains a lot of demos, like NFL Blitz, Bomberman Hero, Tomb Raider 3, I believe, Brave Fencer Musashi, and all that other stuff. Good stuff. Now for the rest of the games, which don't have cases, because I don't have anywhere else to put them. Ark of the Lad, first one, haven't played it. Interactive CDC Uploaders Volume 9, which has a lot of demos, like at least 17 demos, I think. It has Spyro the Dragon, I think. It has Medieval, A Bug's Life, Wild 9, which was a lot of fun. I think it had Tomb Raider 3 as well, and a bunch of other games. Pretty good. Contender. This is very bad. This is a very lackluster boxing game. It's not very fun to play. It's boring as hell, and it's just... That's really all I can say. It's just boring as hell. WWF Smackdown. Not quite as good as the second game, but still a pretty solid entry. Interactive CD Volume 5. This one contains Armored Core, Crash Bandicoot 2, and it has that really shitty Star Wars fighting game, Masters of Terra's Kasai, which is just trash. But it does have Crash 2, which is fun, so it does sell itself out a bit. Arc the Lad 3. I did play this a little bit, but I can't really say much about it to garner a proper opinion on it. Pizza Disc 2. Don't have much to say about this. Midway Arcade's Greatest Hits, the Atari Collection 2. This one contains Paperboy, Centipede, Road Blasters, Crystal Castles, Marble Madness, and Gauntlets. Did I miss anything? No, I said Centipede, I meant Millipede. It has Millipede. The first collection had Centipede. But it's not a bad compilation, but the emulation's not great, for sure. Gex. Not a bad game, but the second and third ones are definitely better to me. Oh, here's a damn good game. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This one... Oh, my god, this game is killer. It's amazing. The graphics are beautiful for the PS1 being a 2D game. The gameplay is just top-notch. It's very spot on, and the controls are very, very responsive and tight. Nails it on the head, and the combat system is just a lot of fun. It is very difficult, but that's to be expected from a Castlevania game, so I don't expect it to be easy, which I understand that. Also, the voice acting, it is cheesy as hell, but damn it, it's hilarious. Arc the Lad 2, I don't have anything to say about this one either. Activision Classic Games 3 Atari 2600. Not a bad compilation, but the biggest issue I have is it takes a while to get from game to game, and it's a little excessive. Loading times are not great. Driver 2. Yeah, I don't have... Oh. Oops. There's Cool Borders 2 here. There's Driver 2. Whose other disc? This one is actually pretty fun. Although it hasn't aged as well as the GTA series. It's still a fun game. I enjoyed it. It was a very revolutionary game, and it did what GTA 3 did before GTA 3 was even a thing. Which is kind of revolutionary for its time. Cool Borders 2. I haven't really played this. I don't have much to say about it. Omega Boost. Now this is a game that's actually a lot of fun to play, but not many people talk about it. It's developed by the same guys as the Gran Turismo series. It's a rail shooter. It's done by Polyphony Digital, who, yeah, I just mentioned to the Gran Turismo series. Very fun game. Frogger. This is a very lackluster remake of the arcade game. It could have been better. It could have been good, but it wasn't really that good. Alright, so that's my PlayStation 1 collection. Nothing too impressive, but there are some really good games in here. Anyways, that is my PS1 collection. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you guys in another collection video. Take care.